whatever happens, we're going up there to get them. So we look back at our commandos. Hey man, follow us. We're going up. And we took off. Look back, and it's just Seth and I, obviously.
Stress is the great equalizer in leadership. When you're cold, you're tired, you're wet, your company's losing money, there's no revenue, you're pinned down by enemy fire, or you're down by 5 with 2 minutes left.
The standard is the standard is the standard. Sending guys out to the force to go do some of the hardest things in the world, and it can't just be because you're a good dude.
Great organizations need leaders who are willing to stand up, take charge, make a decision, and act. The standard for selection, assessment, and initial training of America's Green Berets tests a candidate's ability to lead under stress in the most complex and chaotic environments. To unpack just how we're selecting the next generation of Special Forces operators, I sat down with the team responsible for training them.
Our job is to teach them the fundamental skills that they will utilize, that they will bring to their operational detachments in the future, and ensure that they're set up for success.
Lieutenant Colonel Dave Lucas and Medal of Honor recipient Command Sergeant Major Matt Williams, the command team for 4th Battalion, 1st Special Warfare Training Group, otherwise known as the MOS phase of the Qualification Course. I served with a lot of people in the Army, but there probably aren't 2 better leaders than these when it comes to defining a standard, holding people accountable, and getting results. Sergeant Major Williams received the Medal of Honor for taking charge, saving lives, and destroying the enemy in the Shock Valley of Afghanistan. The majority of his team's leadership was shot in a violent cliffside attack. Lieutenant Colonel Lucas has led at all levels of command, beginning his career as an infantryman in Ranger Battalion before earning a commission and leading Green Berets. We cover the Q course, what it takes to be a successful Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, or Echo, how they're upholding the standard and preparing the force for the peer-to-peer battlefield, and the difference between motivation and leadership. Plus, Sergeant Major Williams shares his account of the Battle of Shock Valley and why sometimes the greatest displays of leadership have nothing to do with rank, position, or tenure. Take a listen, watch, or read our conversation from the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Museum at the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School at Fort Liberty, North Carolina. Then head over to our YouTube channel to watch Sergeant Major Williams and Lieutenant Colonel Lucas share the lineage of America's first Special Forces in the Jedburgh Media Channel's first documentary, Unknown Heroes, Behind Enemy Lines at D-Day, the story of Operation Jedburgh.
Lieutenant Colonel Lucas, Sergeant Major Williams, welcome to the Jedburgh podcast.
All right. Thanks for having us.
It's awesome to be back where it all started. So Dave, we go back a long way, 20 years now, right? I would say, and we had the fortunate or unfortunate opportunity to spend the Q course together, and we just met. But obviously, I've heard your story numerous times, and thank you for all you've done, not only for Brothers in Arms, but the regiment, and getting the story of the regiment out there. And so I'm very appreciative of you both taking your time out of the day to come and sit down with me today. The tagline of the podcast is how you prepare today determines success tomorrow. In your role here in command of 4th Battalion at Special Warfare Center and School, that's your job, is to prepare tomorrow's Green Berets, tomorrow's leaders today in their critical skill, in what we call their MOS, their military occupational specialty. So what are they actually going to do on that team? But before we get to them and they don that Green Beret and they get out there, they got to pass your course. And there's a deliberate process that is used within the command that we call recruit, assess, select, and train. So if you would, for a couple of minutes with me, I want to break those down, because when we build great organizations, whether we build special operators or we build a company, we build an athletic team, we have to instill a process. We can't do like the Oakland Raiders and just go ahead and find the best guy out there, pay him a lot of money and bring him on the team. We got to be deliberate about it. We got to know why we're doing it. So I'll be biased and say we got to do it the Patriot way. The old Patriots. I don't know. I'm not sure how we're doing it right now. Tyler's going to tell. But that's what we got to do. And it has to be a deliberate process. So talk for a second and tell me, what is the mission of 4th Battalion?
Sure, absolutely. So the mission of 4th Battalion, before I get into that specific, I can kind of address what you talked about, right? Which is, it is building that culture and the RAS process of recruit, assess, select, and train. It's all focused around people, and it's getting the right people in. And so that's where, one of the soft truths is humans are more important than hardware. And that defines what 4th Battalion's mission is, but then 1st Special Warfare Training Brief, which is what we do is we prepare students to go out to selections. We actually run the Special Forces Preparation Course, which prepares new recruits into the Army that have raised their right hand and decided to give Special Forces a shot. And so our cadre prepares them for the rigors of that going forward to maximize their chances of success out there. Once they've completed selection and completed their small unit tactics training, then they come back to 4th Battalion, where we have the MOS, military occupational specialties. We have the 18 Alphas, which are the officer course. They're detachment commanders. 18 Bravos, which are Special Forces weapons sergeants. 18 Charlies, which are engineer demo sergeants, and then 18 Echoes, which are the communication sergeants. And so our job is to teach them the fundamental skills that they will utilize, that they will bring to their operational detachments in the future, and ensure that they're set up for success.
I think one of the proudest moments of, I know, my career, certainly, definitely in life, is donning that Green Beret, because it's the culmination of this whole process. But in order to get there, it has to start with that recruit and assess piece. When we go through that process and we're identifying what we're looking for in our candidates, what are those character traits that we're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, to hit on a few specifically, we kind of discussed a little bit, but is it adaptability, teamwork, integrity, all those things that kind of these intangible things that we holistically need from an individual to show up here with, then we can mold the rest of that around them, right? We need people that can work on teams, be comfortable, alone and unafraid, and have the ability to really adapt to their environment, because we throw a ton of different things at you. Obviously, this isn't the most fun place in the world at all times, right?
What are you talking about?
You have to be resilient.
I've had a great trip.
Oh, yeah, you have, right? Yeah, but you have to be resilient in that manner, right? When it's cold and wet, it sucks. You have to we want guys that understand why they're here. What's driving them to be successful here? It's not just to one day put on a Green Beret. I mean, that's an ultimate perk of the job, but that doesn't really get you where you need to be, right? It's what do you really want to do? And those are the questions that we ask these guys every time we see them, like, why are you here? And if you don't know why you're here, then you really need to think about it. And if you don't already have the inherent kind of grit and resiliency, you don't have the ability to work on a team and be adaptable, then you won't find success. Your why can be 1,000 different things, right? It doesn't really matter, because you're the greatest patriot on earth, and you want to, fight and win wars for America. Or you saw Rambo and thought it was awesome, and you want to be that guy. Ultimately, that doesn't matter. Well, yeah, right. I mean, whatever the movie is, I don't know. We need a new one, but that doesn't matter as much as those inherent, abilities to really go above and beyond yourself to be a part of a team. That's, I think, to me, when you boil it down, that's what we're really looking for.
Yeah, I think coming through the course, and certainly graduating the course, it's a culmination of, in one way, but it's really the beginning.
Sure. Oh yeah.
And that's when you're actually going to get out there and you made it you got a seat at the table now. Right. Now, what are you actually going to do with that seat at the table? And what I hear you saying is that character is what matters, because as you put people and leaders in different situations, their character is going to come through. The more they're tested, the different ways that they're tested. We're going to ask people in Special Forces to do different things that they may never even think about. Right. And they're going to show up to their team, and they're going to go be asked to do that, and not only do it, but succeed. And it's going to take a very defined person to be able to go out and do those.
There's no way that we can mirror every scenario that people are going to run into. And so that's why we focus on the person and the soft attributes, and one of them being adaptability, because
the amount of situations that just the three of us could talk about that we were never trained for, but that we encountered is critical. And so it's really training that person so that they can adapt and overcome and be successful at the end of the day, be successful for themselves, their team, and the nation, no matter what comes down their way.
Can you talk about the scenario-based training? Because I think that's probably the most important thing. So as you look at the respective MOS courses, you're going to have, the courses are obviously going to follow a certain structure. You're going to teach them hard skills that they need for their job, and then you're going to put them in scenario-based training. As you develop out those scenarios, what are you looking at, and how are you best tailoring that to the current environment, and how do you project forward what they might endure?
I'll hand it over to Matt in a second, but to talk some of those specifics. But as far as the lash up with the how we stay relevant, we have a very, very tight lash up with the operational force. So we are aware of what's going on. We seek feedback from them to help develop our scenarios, and then we do have critical pieces that some things are just go either you can do the task or you can't, right? And then other things are definitely starts with selecting the right people to be instructors, who then put their subjective evaluation on a student going forward and to determine their success. And so, but at the end of the day, even if somebody is not successful within the course and they leave and go back to the larger army, our goal is to make sure that they leave better than when they got here. So they have skills. They may not be Green Berets, but they have skills, and they can take some of those things back to the force and continue to enhance. So I'll hand it over to Matt to talk some about it.
Yeah, I mean, from a scenario-based training perspective, that is something that really, I think, sets us apart, right? Because like you mentioned, we give you and teach you hard skills, whatever that may be, right? If that's your weapon sergeant, engineer sergeant, communicator sergeant, whatever. Your ability to use a radio or employ a weapon system or, build a bee hut in the middle of somewhere, or something that's you can tangibly bring to a team. But what we really try to do is eke out your capabilities under stress. And the way we do that is through different scenarios, right? And we spend a lot of time, money, and effort on developing these robust, rigorous scenarios that really test the individual, not just on their skills that we've given you, but on their ability to operate, as a functional, well-rounded, robust, human being in a dynamic environment, because that's the key to our success. We don't do anything in a vacuum, and it requires that ability to think outside the box, employ these hard skills that we've given you in a stressful, extremely dynamic environment. And that's something that we put a lot of emphasis on here.
Standards are one of the most important things when we talk about building great organizations, especially when we look at the selection process, the assessment process, but and the training, right? Because you're always being assessed. And even when you go out to your unit, when you go out to your job, we talk about in the civilian world, you have performance assessments, just like we did in the Army, which have to be more than once a year. I have spent a lot of time speaking with executive leaderships in a lot of different companies, and they'll say, "Oh, we give formal feedback once a year." And it's like, so once a year, you tell your people how you're doing. What about the other days, where feedback needs to be continuous? Because you can't uphold a standard once a year. You have to uphold the standard every day. How do you guys view standards? And I'll put it in the context of we're in a difficult time. Okay, recruiting is no secret. Recruiting across the Army is at lower levels than it's been in the past 20 years or so. SOF has been asked to cut 7,000 positions this year. We've been asked to cut 750 last year. But you still got to field the force, and that force has to be of high quality. As you look at the standards across the different MOS courses, how are you upholding those standards?
Upholding those standards is actually fairly easy because all you do is don't change them and continue on, right? And so we're both, as well as the entire chain of command, is the standard is the standard is the standard. Now, we may have to do extra work prior to that in training folks and adding in different training iterations to make sure that people are meeting that standard. And that's what we've done, and that's what we'll continue to do. But if it comes down between dropping the standard and getting more people through, nobody's, our focus is on getting the best initial entry Green Berets out to the force that have met the standard. And we've been able to do that. And the great thing about America is that there are still plenty of young people out there that are willing to answer the call. Sometimes they may need a little help. The younger new generation maybe hasn't spent as much time outdoors and playing sports. Okay, that's fine. We can help you with that. And so we employ operational psychologists. We have our preservation of the force and family effort through SOCOM, gym coaches and whatnot to get people physically, mentally prepared for the rigors that they may not have experienced previously in their life, but they're about to if they continue down this path.
Yeah, talk to just briefly real quick. It's easy in that manner, right? Like we understand them. We empower our companies and our committees to employ those standards and maintain them to the highest level. And then at the end of the day, probably depending on who you ask, the worst or best part of our job is that at the end we get to adjudicate those standards all the time. And it is difficult to sit there and have a conversation with an individual that hasn't met those standards and let them know that unfortunately at this time they haven't, but that's what has to be done. Our standards are unwavering in the sense that we hold very heavily the weight that we understand we're sending guys out to the force to go do some of the hardest things in the world, and it can't just be because you're a good dude, right? That's not what we do here. My buddies that are team sergeants and company sergeant majors and battalion CSMs all rely on us to make those judgment calls the right way. And that's what we do.
We come from the GWAT generation. Okay. Well, David might be a little bit older, but we come from the GWAT generation. but that generation is retiring. Okay, it's coming up, right? I came in 2003. Right? I went to a retirement ceremony for one of the guys I went to basic training and OCS with a couple of months ago. All right, what impact is that generation retiring and now coming into senior positions? Where you guys are at now. What impact is that having on the tactical level, on the ODA, on the company level? Because as we've watched, as I've been here, this morning and yesterday setting up, there's a lot of folks coming in here to check in with no combat patches, which is something we didn't see when we were coming through the pipeline. What impact is that having?
Yeah, that's actually it's a good question because we hope that we're doing the best that we can to maintain the lessons that we've learned and the things that we've done to evolve into the force that we are today. But it's also a great opportunity for us to take a clean, fresh look at the world, right? In the way that we need to operate, in the way that we should operate with the next war. The GWAT for us, I think, we've all experienced it in one form or fashion. And while, for most of us, the formative years of our career, it holistically wasn't really the SF mission. It wasn't what we all, whether you like it or not, signed up to do. It's what you did sign up to do. It's what you went and did, but that's not really our core mission, right? Like foreign internal defense is not something that we holistically do. We are before that. Like our purpose is left of bang. We're getting back, in my opinion, we're getting back to our roots in that manner, and really, we're out there in the world. We're making relationships. We're building those key future relationships that are going to take us into and through the next conflict. And so we have the, it's our job to impart the wisdom on the new guys that we've learned for 20 years of hard fought, blood, sweat, and tears combat in that way, and make sure that they don't make some of the same mistakes that we did, but also understand that they're carrying this forward into a new operational environment, a very dynamic world that frankly will not be what we saw. And I think that's probably the most important thing, is that we don't get so hung up on 20 years of GWAT. We get hung up on the fact that we experienced a lot of things, met and saw and worked with some of the greatest human beings on earth and carried us through that time. But we're walking into a new future. And it's these guys' responsibility to get there and be successful there.
To me, that's one, I see that as an opportunity. And I think that's something that should excite candidates who are coming in, people who are thinking about becoming a Green Beret, is that you're going to get to go do things that we haven't done that much over the last 20 years. It's been going on in the background. But if we think about the next fight, and we think about this, what is a peer-to-peer competition that we have with our nation-state adversaries who are out there. For 20 years, we didn't necessarily fight nation-states. Yes, there was backings by nation states that fought against us, but we didn't go, there was not this discussion of a naval battle against China, right? Or putting boots on the ground in Iran or any of that, okay? Not that we're necessarily discussing that now, but these are things we have to think about. Technology is paramount now on the modern day battlefield. We saw that evolve in our careers. I mean, when we came in, we still had like the old like Alice pack, with the right. I mean, everything's changed. Okay, there was no podcast back then. Yeah, so it's evolved tremendously over the course of the last 20, 25 years. But we've also become very reliant on technology.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, we need tough people, physically, mentally tough people, to operate in a world in which technology, if you really think about it, is designed to make your life easier. Right. Everything on your cell phone is not designed for you to do a hard thing. You don't even call people anymore because that process is actually too hard. Right. Dial a phone number. Yeah. Okay? So you text somebody. Yeah. So everything in technology is designed to make your life easier, but special operators, to do the missions that you're talking about, require them to be mentally and physically tough. How do you reinforce that? And how do you balance integrating technology into the force with creating people who are just hard and want to do hard things?
Yeah, that's our purpose. Right? I mean, exactly that. Like we're very aware of it. And we spend a lot of time and effort on maintaining the physical, dominance that's required to be a successful Green Beret. I mean, that's something that we holistically do, understanding that the conversation around technology has to be had. We can't be ignorant in that way, right? We're past the point of should I use a GPS or a compass, right? That's irrelevant. We're moving forward into implementing technologies in such a new dynamic way that we have to maintain that forefront and capability. But you got to be able to carry it in, right, and employ it or whatever it may be, and that's something that we have not got away from. So, in that respect, the Q course and what we do, across SWCC still remains the same, right? We're still out there with rucks on the back and carrying all the gear and making those movements and upholding the physical standards. But as Carl Lucas said, we're unfortunately or fortunately, it doesn't matter however you want to look at it, we're spending more time making people more resilient and robust. The kids that we're getting, some of them struggle in that way, right? They don't have the robust physical resiliency that some of us did go in, but we've adapted to that. We've found ways to get them where they need to be to go out and be successful in that domain.
I think it's important to look at the fact that we are the most powerful military that's ever existed in the history of the world, bar none. But the Taliban control Afghanistan, and they did not have the technology. And so technology is important. It is enabling. It is critical in some cases. But at the end of the day, if I had to choose between the right people and the right technology, I would go with the right people all day long. And then you layer on that technology on top of the right people, which is what we do within Special Forces to create the ultimate fighting machine. And I think that's the key going forward. Right? It is greatly mission enhancing. However, it is not. I would not put it as absolutely critical, but it is mission enhancing, and it is only becoming more and more important as we go forward.
Well, I think your example proves it, right? I mean, number one, you referenced earlier soft truths. People are more important than hardware. Quality's better than quantity, and that's what we have to develop in soft. But at the end of the day, people take ground. Absolutely. People hold ground. Look what's going on in Israel and in Gaza. Yes, you can drop a lot of bombs, but at the end of the day, Israel still has to put people on the ground to close with and destroy the enemy. Right. And that comes down to technology-enabled people who are effective at their jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. No, people still our number one business for sure. I mean, we're not looking to get out of that anytime soon.
Leadership matters. Okay, when we talk about people. Regardless of everything else that you have going on here with respective MOS, building competent, specialized skills, you're developing leaders at their core. How do you define leadership, each of you?
I'll go first.
I've been waiting for this moment.
So defining leadership, right? That it, I would say first off that it is something that we do, right? We look at and we evaluate people based on their leadership. So coming through to the most senior NCO officer, all the way down to the newest private that enlisted, that was in basic training just a few short months ago. They all have to demonstrate leadership of some sort. So, okay, so what does that mean, right? You tell people, hey, you have to be a leader. Really, it's being able to influence others and in order to accomplish the mission in this case. Now, how you do that is very important, right? You know as well as we do. It's not maybe the stereotypical movie of the drill sergeant yelling in your face, but it's more relational leadership and building that unit cohesion through teamwork in order to influence through your personality, not necessarily the rank on your collar. Because again, that junior private may be leading that particular patrol out somewhere or that mission throughout the course, and they have to lead other more senior people with a lot more experience. And so it's being able to accomplish that mission through I would say using the soft attributes, right? Integrity, teamwork, etc. As they go forward.
Well, but the drill sergeant can be highly motivating.
Yeah, I'm not saying nobody's ever yelled here.
Yeah. Yeah, there's obviously motivation and leadership are not the same thing, right? Like the way I look at it, as Charlie said, I think influence is primary, right? You have to be able to influence, and you provide purpose and direction, motivation, right? Motivation is in there, but you can't provide motivation without a clear purpose that you've taken the time to empower and educate your people on. And I think that's one of the most important things about leadership is empowerment and education. And fortunately, we get to sit in the seats back where, as you mentioned earlier, where this all started, right? So we're in Force Payne. Our job here is to educate, and through that education, we're providing these kids the purpose, like the purpose to, why it is they're a Green Beret, what they've learned, and how to take all this knowledge and stuff that we've given them to go out and be successful. I think that's really true leadership, if you really boil it down, is those things.
The Jedburghs had, when Operation Jedburgh was commissioned, this is what they looked for. I had to research this. Men of adventurous spirit, not inclined to shrink from a challenge or to look for the easy way out. And they were men who liked to think for themselves, determined to serve with only the best. To me, that defines a Green Beret.
Absolutely. Still relevant.
I mean, our lineage goes back to the OSS and the Jedburghs. But I also think about the fact that it's easy to be a leader when everything's going well. When it's sunny outside, your business is making money, you don't have any problems at home, okay, your kids aren't acting out, which, is never, right? You don't have deadlines, okay, you're not under pressure. But that's not reality. The reality is we live in what we call a VUCA world, the Army doctrinal term. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Soft Green Berets, and the motto, the nicknames out there, masters of chaos. How do we create leaders that can operate effectively and make decisions in these times of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity? Because that's what we're asking them to do from day one. And that has to be introduced in these training programs. Right. And it's only going to get compounded when they go into the operational force. When you guys look at this next generation and you look at the major, I would say, threats, or we can call them challenges, we can even call them opportunities. What do you see out there that will be the biggest advantage that soft holds, but also what's going to be the biggest challenge? Twofold question.
Yeah. I think the biggest threat out there is, we follow the national defense strategy and priorities, right? And we already talked about it. The pure fight going forward. So looking at China, Russia, these types of activities, and some of the irregular activities that they're taking right now, use the Chinese use of activities within the South China Sea, right? So working against Filipino fishermen, running them out, trying to disrupt that area. And so, okay, so how do we as the U.S. now, Special Forces is not going to combat that. but how does the U.S. combat that? And that's an example. But as we go forward, if it were to go into a hot war, then we have to be fully prepared for that, right? And so that's where doing our operations, doing these training exercises, going out to the ranges, doing all the things that we do. But it also consists of other activities that Matt talked about earlier, which is having the relationships prior to the war starting, right? We have Green Berets deployed to dozens and dozens of countries and on any given day. They're there working with host nation forces, building those relationships, as well as the foreign capabilities as an ally to the United States. And so that's where we extend our influence and leadership throughout. So as far as the greatest threat, I think it's been pretty well defined for us. And then our part in that is building out our influence around the world prior to any conflict happening. And I'm going to ask you to repeat the second part.
What's the biggest opportunity?
Job security. There's so much instability. There's never been a time where, whether it was post Korea, prior to Vietnam, and throughout the entire Cold War, we have, that's where we're not just this is not a tank battalion, right? That makes its money and its job is to out there and destroy other tank battalions or take other tactical objectives, right? We don't see tank battalions deploying all over, and they have a huge fan of Abrams. However, our jobs don't start or end in combat operations. Or major combat operations. We are there throughout the continuity and through all phases of conflict. So well before, as discussed previously, we're out with friendly nations, working with them, building those relationships. And I think that's where the opportunity is that alliances and American leadership around the world, I think, is critical, and Special Forces plays an integral part in that. We're certainly not doing it on our own, but we do play a part in that by building up allies around the world.
Yeah, and then it's kind of going to what you're talking about. It's how we prepare for it, really. We have an opportunity now because we have more information we've ever had before. But still, our job is to make sure that the first time these guys are tested and stressed isn't that day, right? It's not the day they find out they're going into China or whatever. It's today, like starting today. You want to be tested and strained and stressed to the max, and the guys that can navigate that effectively, then they carry it forward, right? And they get to wear the Green Beret and go be a member of a detachment that's going to face some of the biggest challenges the world, has to offer.
Can we talk about having to take action in the VUCA environment? Yeah. April 6, 2008. What happened?
Yeah, so, it's interesting, especially sitting in this seat and talking about what we talked about to this point, right, is what does 4th Battalion do? And I get to tell you from experience, 4th Battalion prepares you for combat, right?
Your first combat deployment.
Right, yeah, first combat deployment.
E5.
E5, yeah. So April 6, 2008, back up just a little bit. I graduated the Q course in August of that year. I did, took the normal leave, PCS, whatever that means. I've actually never PCS. I've never left here. Yeah. I just brought my papers over to somebody else and they signed them or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, so, I have the distinct honor and privilege of signing the 3rd Special Forces group.
Yeah, we won't hold it against you.
We all have our choice. Which was my first choice, actually. But anyway, so I signed a group, meet the team. You mentioned earlier one of the greatest accomplishments, right, is earning your Green Beret, and I think second to that is that the nervous kind of feeling of excitement that you have when you're meeting your company sergeant major for the first time and learning about what ODA you're going to and what that interaction's like.
Excitement and terrified at the same time.
Right. Like, I still remember it. So I joined ODA 3336. Some people will say it was 396. They made a transition at a time.
That's right when they were changing the nomenclature.
Folks, it's irrelevant. And I quickly learned that I was joining a really, really good ODA. And this isn't a biased. I got to see it from the outside looking in. Like these guys they just worked Met the team sergeant, and he's like, hey, we're going to Afghanistan. Literally, it was 2 weeks. Like, I signed, and he's like, we're leaving. This is your date. I was like, okay, I don't know what that means. So I get tough boxes, and they're, I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to put in these things. Yeah, I don't need anything. I was easy X-rated, but I got even more, right? So anyway, we deployed, we go to Afghanistan, and I learned, they were given the best mission of the time because they were the best trained, most developed team in the company. That's not just, I'm not just saying that because I got to be part of it. I got to see it, and this is what I learned as part of this deal. I've taken that with me through my whole career. That's why I bring it up. I think it's important. Anyway, so we move forward. We're partnering with the 1st Commando Battalion, or Kandak, operational in Afghanistan at the time. So they'd been basically followed kind of our model and built a Ranger Battalion light infantry unit in Afghanistan. Kind of light infantry, capable of maneuvering relatively quickly, that kind of stuff. So we're partnered with them. Spend the whole deployment with them. Do several missions. We had the fortunate circumstance of getting to travel all over Afghanistan because we were the only operational unit they had at the time. So got to go. We're stationed out in Kabul. Got to go out east, go down south, all this stuff. Anyway, fast forward to April, and we have a mission to go capture and kill a high-value target in the mountains of northeastern Afghanistan, which is relatively treacherous place. That's why they like it there. Well,
they never make it easy on us.
It's one of those things you learn later on. And actually, I looked this up pretty recently. Actually, nobody had been there since the Russians. Just one.
I think the Soviets weren't even really interested in going there.
No, because terror was the whole. Obviously, and there's no reason to go there unless you live there and want to fortify it and things like that,
and plan terrorist attacks.
Yeah. So that's it. So, we make our way to this village. We have about 100 Afghan commandos, and my team's a 12-man team. We're beefed up a little bit to do the mission. We have a combat controller, combat caravan, some things like that. As we make our way to the village, our lead element maneuvers up to the high ground. So they make their way up to the village. So we have to climb basically the side of this mountain to get up to where we're going. I'll leave the tactical and strategic decision making on why we infilled the way we did out. It just is what it is. It was not a good idea, but we did it, right? Because that was the mission. So we had built a low ground. We're assaulting up a mountain. I wouldn't teach anybody to do this, but it is what it is. So that happens. About the time our lead element gets to the mouth of the village, the whole valley erupts. I am down in the valley with my team sergeant, our medic, Ron, and a bunch of commandos and stuff. We each have our own squad and everything. Immediately we get notified that Green Berets had been shot. So he's in the middle of the element, about halfway up the cliff, or halfway up the mountain. He was shot in the hip. So we only had one medic on the team at the time. That was Ron. Scott calls him up. It's like, hey, Ron, we got to go. I decided, I'm still not 100% sure why. I think I got a relative FOMO situation. I was like, I'm coming with you. I'm not staying down here. This sucks. But in all seriousness, I had the heavy weapons squad with me. That was who I was tasked with for the day. So I was like, I'll at least bring some firepower up there. So we set off up to where these guys were injured. By the time we got in there, Luis Morales had been shot as well. So we had a serious problem on our hands at this point, right? These guys have been pinned down pretty well. The enemy was maneuvering on them the whole time, and really hammered them pretty hard. So we had a killed interpreter, some wounded commandos, and 2 injured Americans at the same location.
Which really becomes the priority in our minds in these situations. We're in a firefight, but we also are trying to save lives.
Yeah, absolutely. So, at that point with 2 casualties, the mindset is still the mission. Yeah. And that's one of these hard logical leaps that you have to make in a VUCA environment. It's like, what are we doing? And you can't get sucked into the fact that 2 of your really good friends, they've really grown to be actual friends with, right? It's been a small time, but we've done a lot of shit together. Are laying there bleeding out, and you got one guy that's capable of working on him. He's directing traffic the best that he can. and decide what we're going to do. And the team sergeant, so Scott, Kyle Walton, and I had that actual conversation. Like, okay, looking at the situation, you know, I mean, it's a conversation in a place and time that I'll never actually forget. I was literally the three of us standing there, like, all right, what's the deal? You know, how are we gonna handle this? And we settled on Canadian mission. Like, we have to get to the village. If we don't, we're kind of screwed. So the plan is we're gonna move the village, establish a foothold, move the casualties in there, give Ron some time to actually treat these guys, and, you know, move on. Like, try to fight our way through. Just use kind of our superior tactics and firepower to move through. So I moved down to call up some other reinforcements to help us out. By the time I did that, Scott got shot, John Walding got shot, and so now we're up to 4 casualties in the same location. So team sergeant got shot in the chest, in the arm. John got hit in the leg, and basically amputated his lower leg immediately. So now we're back to 4 wounded guys in the same location, really no bigger than this room. You know, very minimal cover. And the enemy obviously, you know, knows the situation now. They know where we're at. They know what they've got going on. So things really start to change. Right now, you're really, okay, what are we doing? Like, what are we actually here? And that's one of the hardest parts to figure out at that point. Like, who's taking charge, right? Our team sergeant's later. He's out. A lot of our senior guys are out. You know, the captain's there. He's directing traffic. Our JTAC's up there. He's doing what he's doing. You know, directing traffic, dropping bombs. But the situation is not looking very good, obviously. So, long story short, when I found out they're wounded, I climbed back up to their location. Scott's able to move because he's shot in the arm and the chest plate. So we decided we're going to move him down. There's a little building at the bottom of the cliff. We'll put him down there, and then we've got to move the rest of these casualties. Basically, it comes into a Kazabac situation. We don't have the firepower or the manpower to move to the village anymore. So I stepped back down from their location with Scott. I passed him off, and the other Bravo and I have another conversation. Like, all right, here's the deal. Like, these guys are up there. We're here. We need to move them. We lost calls with them for a while. So now it's 2 junior Bravos on the side of the cliff figuring out what we're going to do. You know, obviously some time had passed. We hadn't heard from them. So we kind of assumed the worst. And Seth and I, again, another conversation always. Remember, we had a conversation about it. Like, okay, we kind of feared the worst, right? We assumed they'd just been shot up. We weren't sure, but we're like, they're coming down. Like, whatever happens, we're going up there to get them. So we look back at our commandos. Hey, man, follow us. We're going up. And we took off. Look back, and it's just Seth and I, obviously.
No commandos.
Commandos decided to do what they were doing. They didn't want to help, but that's part of the gig, right? So we're fortunate enough to make our way. We kind of climb this cliff. We scale this cliff kind of laterally to get to where they're going, because we can't go up the same way that I've been up there the previous times. We get around to where they are. Unfortunately, everybody's still there. They just lost comms. We were able to help them get comms back up, and evacuate the guys outside the cliff. During that time, our JTAC and medic both, the two most impressive things I've seen was our JTAC young guy to his first deployment, just dropping bombs like you wouldn't believe, just pinpointing 500-pound bombs, 2,000-pound bombs, danger close, like things that we talk about testing stress and the ability to work under a stressful environment, like things that would stress somebody out to do normally, he was able to do. And then Ron, still a true testament to what an 18 Delta is. Like, we haven't really talked about 18 Deltas today because we don't really handle them much. They're their own group, but the most highly trained trauma medics, trauma capable human beings on the planet are our 18 Deltas, and I got to see that firsthand with what Ron did. I mean, he literally kept 4 guys alive, 2 of which for sure should be dead. But fortunately, he was pretty good at the job, and then handled stress in a way I've never seen anybody handle it before, right? He had the most stressful situation you could imagine, he had 4 guys' lives in his hands, literally, right? And there was never a hiccup, never a concern. He took a couple rounds off the helmet. It didn't matter. Like, he's there plugging holes, directing traffic. You know, he's got a combat cameraman that was carrying a camera 20 minutes ago until he got shot. You know, putting tourniquets on people and treating wounds and doing things that this kid had never, you know, been trained to do either. Which again is just a testament to the force multiplication nature of a Green Beret, in my opinion. Something that I got to witness firsthand, which is holistically incredible. So long story short, we were able to evacuate these guys and make our way out of the village. At the end of the day, the team was awarded, there was, you know, 10 Silver Stars given out, an Air Force Cross. Combat Chairman got a Silver Star. Pretty impressive. And then, you know, fast forward 10 years later, Ron and I were both awarded or upgraded to the Medal of Honor, which leads me to where I am today, right? It's allowed me the opportunity to continue to serve in the regiment, and the Army found it fitting enough to let me come back to here, where it all started, you know, 18 years ago, roughly. But get back to your question of a VUCA environment, right? Like, this is what we started talking about. Was that, right? That was not just me. It was I got to see this as a bystander almost, got to see this ODA who was extremely highly trained, who spent a ton of time and effort making sure that they were prepared to go conduct this mission, faced with the most audacious environment that we'd seen to that time. And every single person on the team did exactly what they could or should have done in the situation that they were given. And it was an inherent trust and ability we had as a team to operate in this, you know, environment, this VUCA environment that you mentioned, for us to be successful, or we 100% would not. And there would have been a lot of dead people, probably a search and rescue type situation had that gone any other way. And it's not one person, it wasn't really 2 people, it was a team. It was an ODA capable of handling their own dynamic, complex environment to come together as a team to be as successful as we possibly could have been in that worst situation that we've seen until that point.
I mean, it's the definition of everything we talked about today.
Right.
How you prepare today determines success tomorrow. Taking people of character, training them to a defined standard, never wavering on that standard. And then when everything goes wrong and you're in that VUCA environment, do we have the mental and physical fortitude and toughness to make critical, difficult decisions and take action?
Right.
Thank you.
If I can.
Seriously, I mean that. So from...
I mean, I appreciate the chance to get to talk about it, right? Because it is important in that way. You know, I think that this story, the story of our ODA at the time, is a shining example of what an ODA is capable of doing. A small 12-man team that's able to take the things that they've been trained in and adapt those things. And at the end of the day, boil it down to something we talked about a long time ago on this podcast. It was teamwork, right? That's what it was. At the end of the day, it's teamwork and your ability to adapt and overcome and be resilient. And those are the things that we need out of people and we look for every day here.
What do you tell the E5 who comes in and looks up to you and says, you know, like, what's next for me?
That's a good question. I mean, you know, it's an interesting position to be in. I don't highlight that fact. To me,
but they know. They better.
You know, I don't know if they do or not.
Let's put it that way.
I guess some of them will find out maybe here in a little while when this comes out. But no, I'm the CS in the 4th Battalion SWIC, right? And that's my job, my purpose. You know, other things have happened in my career. That's great, but that's true for everybody. You know, and I don't shy from that responsibility of having the medal. I understand fully what it means, what it represents, and I'm eternally grateful for that. But I also don't want to separate the fact that I am the Command Sergeant Major 4th Battalion SWIC, but I am by far no better than any of the cadre that work for us at all. Like, we have some of the greatest cadre in the world. Some, you know, our company leadership, our committee leadership, and down to the men that teach these dudes every single day that run the Special Forces Preparation Course to make these guys physically and mentally resilient enough to go tackle the qualification course are the ones that these guys should be looking up to, because they are their teammates in the future, right? I've spent my time here, and I'm eternally grateful for everything I've experienced. But at the end of the day, I'm a figurehead. I'm a battalion CSM, right? Somebody that nobody wants to talk to and that wants to be friends with. And that's just is what it is,
Humility is one of the characteristics that we assess for too. So I appreciate that. Well, guys, I got to let you get back to some meetings, because that's how we really get work done some days. But before I do, I got one more question for you. The Jedburghs, and you will have heard this term before, they had to do 3 things every day to be successful in their job. They had to be able to shoot, they had to be able to move, and they had to be able to communicate. A lot of what you just talked about in your story. What are the 3 things that you do every day in your own life, professional or personal, that set the conditions for success? What are those habits that allow you to achieve what you achieve on a daily basis?
All right.
This is a real test.
I'll take first stab at it. But before I answer your question, I just want to say on Matt, you couldn't ask for a better CSM to be in charge of future Green Berets, or a better role model for those guys coming through, because it's not something that I've ever heard him discuss ever. Actually, that's the first time I've ever heard him talk through it, because we try to focus on being the 4th Battalion command team. But he's kidding himself if he thinks that all of these young guys don't know. But it's an honor to get to work with him. It's great, and to get to do this together, it's pretty fantastic. So it's great. So 3 things. I think first and foremost, right, no matter who you are, no matter what position, we talked about it before, you've got to be physically and mentally capable of doing a job. And so for us, for me, that entails some sort of physical preparation. We've been given all the tools to do that here within special operations, and so if you don't take advantage of it, I think it's your fault. But you've always got to be ready to go, no matter what seat you occupy, because you never know what's going to come next. The other is we talked to a cadre. I was previous cadre. We were both cadre here before, and it gets to the professionalism for the students, and that is, be the Green Beret that you want them to be, so meeting that standard every day, whether, right uniform, right actions, be the expert at your job, whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing, be the best at it that you can be, and then turn around and learn the next one. Matt talked about when they got back up with their element, they had to reestablish comms, but it was 2 18 Bravos weapon sergeants having to do that. And so had they not known that, they wouldn't have been able to be able to do that. So be professional and the best at your job, and then move on to learn something new. And then for me personally, over the years of just like all of us being gone, I try to spend as much time with my family as possible, because they're the reason that I am here and continue to do. So spending quality time with the family. I kind of lost out on the quantity through the DUI years, but that's okay. We all signed up and do it, and I wouldn't change it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of echo the same thing, but I'll like Kroger said, family for sure. It's something that we talk about at SWIG a lot, right? When you come to SWIG, it's your time to take a break, take care of family, and do those things. But I feel like, if we don't highlight that we're willing and capable of doing that, and I will do that, I put my family first. Like, this is the opportunity to go to baseball practice and soccer or whatever it is that your kids are doing. Actually be there. This is one of the most important jobs in the world, right? But if you're the only one that can do it, then we're wrong. And through that, that's something I try to do every day, and be open and highlight that. Like, look, I'm leaving at 3:30 today because my kids got baseball or whatever it is, right? I think that's extremely important here. And it's a different, probably a different look than most people get or are used to. But I take that personally. I think that's, I'm willing to not be in the office if it means I'm doing something with my family, to highlight that that's perfectly okay and reasonable to do. And the rest of it, you have to stay, physically, mentally fit. You're always learning, doing something physical. Take care of yourself too. We all hear we've had leaders that tell us, don't wait till the end to do it. that, and then they wait to the end to do whatever that is, right? But that's same thing, right? Take advantage of the things that we have around us, go to PT, take care of yourself. Also, so that you understand how to educate the younger guys on how to do it better than we've done it. I think that's extremely important. And that leads into, earn a beret every day, whatever that may mean for your situation. The position you're in can influence what that actually means to you. But if that's what you're doing, then I think you're on the right path.
Stay physically and mentally fit, but we got to physically prepare, lead by example, spend time with your family, and earn your beret every day.
All right. Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate everything you guys are doing, and I'll tell you that I miss being in this organization every single day, and I'm jealous of what you guys get to do, and I'm honored to be able to sit down with you, tell this story. We have come a long way in 20 years, 80 years as a regiment and an organization, but I do believe that the best days do remain ahead of us all the time, and our nation and the world relies on this organization, and I'll go to the mat with anyone who tells me differently. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Before we go, got one thing for you. You've done your career. Won't go into what you did within SF, but for those that don't know, was remarkable. We were able to, I think, on both of our last trips on our ODA, link up overseas, and what you do through your efforts after taking off the uniform, getting that word out. So recruiting, right? Like anybody that listens to the Jedburgh podcast understands what it is, not just what we talked about today, but and so as you go forward, I got a little gift for you that we brought you. So this is one of
look at this.
The instructor hats that guys get when they come through. Your flag.
The 10th group flag.
So
just thank you.
Hey, thanks, man.
Thank you so much.
It's great to
be here with you. This is amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Absolutely.
Awesome.
American Jedburghs went on to form the foundation of the United States Special Forces and the Special Activities Directorate of the Central Intelligence Agency. Thanks for listening to the Jedburgh Podcast, an official program of the Green Beret Foundation. I'm your creator and host, Fran Racioppi. Join us next week for a new episode on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube for full episodes, highlights, and other long and short form content. If you like what you heard, give us a like and leave a review. Follow the Jedburgh Podcast and the Green Beret Foundation on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, X, or Threads. Send your comments and inquiries to fran@jedburghpodcast.com. As former members of Special Operations Forces, the Jedburgh Media Channel and the Green Beret Foundation remain committed to supporting all generations of U.S. Army Special Forces and their families. Thanks for joining us on this episode. How you prepare today determines success tomorrow.